Hi, welcome to today's sew along. Just wanted to get started by doing a little bit of an introduction and overview of the materials that we'll be using. So I have all of my pieces cut out. These are all my denim pieces, remembering that it's a rigid denim, so a non-stretch denim. And then I have the pieces that I need cut out of lining fabric. This is a May Gibbs fabric, so if you're Australian, you'll know what that is, and if you're not Australian, you might not. But it's a kind of, I don't know, maybe from the 20s. Anyway, there were children's books, and anyway, Nerida Hanson Fabrics has done a reprint of some of the characters onto fabric. Anyway, it's very cute, but I don't know if I would wear it. So anyway, I'm using it as pocket linings. This is pretty fine. It's probably similar in weight to like a Tana lawn, which is on the fine side, to be honest. Not quite as thin as a Tana lawn, but I don't put super heavy things in my pockets, so it shouldn't be a problem. If you're someone who really jams a lot of things like keys, pointy things in your pockets, you might like to use something a little bit sturdier than just a lawn, like a linen or a more heavyweight cotton. I made my own bias tape out of the same fabric, just so it's matchy-matchy. And this is going to bind the inside lower edge of the waistband. I also have my waistband pieces here. And I have interfaced one set of them, just using the same pattern pieces, just so you'll need to cut 2 pairs of the front and 2 pairs of the back. Make sure you're notching where needed in the pattern. There aren't too many notches, but the ones that are there are pretty important. The other thing that I have done is marked in my drill holes. So you can see it's just poked using a stiletto or an awl. So the nice thing about that is it will heal again because I haven't actually cut a hole in it, it's just poked apart. And so that's what I do to mark drill holes always. I also have my 9-inch zipper, which is the size of zipper I need for my size. Some sizes use a longer zipper and some sizes use a shorter zipper. If you are making a size that requires an 8-inch zipper, those aren't standard, and we have another video on how to shorten a zipper to the appropriate length. Or perhaps if you have a jeans zipper in your stash that you're going to reuse and you need to cut down, you can take a look at that video for that. I would just say at this point, please make sure that you are using, in fact, a jeans zipper and not just a metal zipper, and definitely not a plastic or nylon zipper. This is a YKK one. YKK basically makes the best zippers. Jeans zippers are very sturdy. This is a number 5. The other thing they have is they have a mechanism in the pull, the zipper pull here, that means that when the zipper pull is down like this, you can't actually unzip it. It kind of locks it into place, so your fly is not going to like unzip itself while you're wearing it, which is always a good thing. Want to talk about top stitching thread for 1 second as well. So I went ahead and I checked the tension on my machines. So I'm using an overlocker or serger today. You can also use a zigzag or an overcast stitch on your domestic machine to finish the edges. If you are lucky enough to have 2 sewing machines, then I would recommend that you thread one up with top stitching thread and one up with just normal thread. If you're using the same machine, that's fine too. It will prompt you in the instructions, and I'll prompt you in this, when you need to change threads. Now, I've tried to be as efficient as possible in terms of changing threads, but there are some times when you just have to change them back and forth for each step, and that's just kind of the way it goes for jeans. The other thing, so I've just gotten some examples of some top stitching thread here. This is what I like to use, is either the Gooderman top stitching thread that you can buy pretty easily at a fabric store, or this is Gutermann Mara 30. I like using the Mara 30 rather than the 70 because it really shows up, and I think if you're using, if you're top stitching, you want to be able to see it. I did a few tension tests using my top stitching thread. See if we can focus. Yes, here we go. And I want to not be able, so I use the bobbin thread is just regular thread, and then the upper thread is top stitching thread, and I want to not be able to see any of the top stitching thread on the wrong side. So you can see here on this one, just very slightly you can see that, and so I needed to tighten the top tension. So if you can see loops of the top stitching thread on the bottom, that means that you need to tighten your top tension, and I have to tighten mine a lot. Basically, the thicker the thread that I use, so this Mara 30 is a little bit thicker than the domestic top stitching thread. I have to crank down my upper tension quite a lot. As an example, so I use a Bernina, the standard tension, upper tension for that is a number 5, which means nothing, it's just a number. So it's number 5, but I've cranked it to almost a 9, just to give you an example of how much I needed to tighten that. I also tested it out on quite a few layers, like 4 layers, just to see where we're at there. Okay, so I think we are ready to sew. So the first thing you're going to do is fuse together your waistband. So apply the fusible interfacing to one set of waistbands. So that is the first thing you're going to do. The next thing we're going to do, and this is a little bit out of sequence from the instruction booklet, and I just do it like this because I think it's a nice way to start, is I'm going to start with the belt loops with you today. Belt loops are good because you can sew them, and if your tension's off or something, if you sew them at the beginning, then it's not a big deal to like cut new ones. Also in general with this sewing pattern, when you're finishing your seams, I would urge you to not remove any fabric. So if you're serging, so serge just so that the knife runs just along this edge. It's just trimming any like frayed bits off. It's not actually cutting fabric off. You should be able to get a very clean finish like that. So you can see here, I haven't actually removed any fabric. I've just run it along that edge, and it's very clean. Like, you don't have to cut off fabric to get a clean finish. That's because we need to be able to measure accurately. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to finish one edge of these belt loop pieces. So we basically sew the belt loop in like long strips, and then we cut it up later. So I'm just going to sew that, and then I'll put them aside for later. So let's serge along one side only of each of them. Right, so I have finished one edge, so serged or zigzagged or overcast, whichever. And then what you're going to do is flip it over to the wrong side and fold it. So we're going to press it in. So firstly, you're going to press it 1/3 up and then 1/3 over. So it's going to end up something like this. Here's one I did already. So you can see I've pressed it into thirds like that. I've tried to press it just ensuring that this finished edge is not like hanging over, because from the right side you don't want to be able to see that. Just wanted to show you the foot that I'm using, because this is kind of important for our top stitching. So this is just a regular foot, and I use my foot as my top stitching guide. Just want to focus on that, hold on. There we go. So when I am pin stitching or edge stitching, I run the edge that I want to sew away from along this inner side of the foot. Now, this is a Bernina foot. I do the same thing on my industrial. I do my same thing on, I have a Janome as well. So whichever, just universal foot I'm using, I just use that inside edge there as my guide to sewing my pin stitching or edge stitching. And then I use the edge of the foot for the second row. So for example, I would run the edge along there, and then the second row of stitching, I would run the edge of my foot along the first row I did and come out with the second row, and that ensures that you get a really even result. So what I'm going to do for the belt loops is I'm going to use top stitching thread. I'm going to run the edge of this foot, the inner edge of the foot, along the outer edge of the belt loop. So pin stitch or edge stitch along both edges of this belt loop, and then I'm going to set those aside. Okay, I have edge stitched, pin stitched those belt loops, and now I'm going to just set them aside. Next thing we're going to do is sew together the fly shields. So what I'm going to do is I'm right sides together. I'm going to sew just with a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance just around this kind of J shape. So I'm going to leave this top open and this side open, and then I will show you how we're going to grade and clip it. Okay, so I've done that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just grade down one side. So I'm just going to lift up one edge of the seam allowance and take my scissors and just cut that back. Don't cut it too close. It really depends on your fabric. This denim's really soft actually, even though it's a heavy weight, it's a 12-ounce denim. It's because it's bleached, it's quite softened, and it's not super duper stable as a result. So I'm not going too close. You see that? I've just about halved the allowance. Now, because this is an outside curve, I need to clip it. So I'm just going to go with these, and I'm going to do them really close together because it's a really tight curve. But I'm not going to go too close to that stitching line. I mean, maybe millimeter or two away. I'm not very good with imperial for very small increments like that, so I don't know what that is, sorry. 1/16 of an inch, 32nd, I have no idea. Let's do one more here. Okay, now what I'll do is I will press this open here, and then I'll turn it through and give it a press, and then I'll edge stitch all the way around. You can use your top stitching thread, but actually I'm just going to recommend using just your all-purpose, just so you don't have to change threads. It's not important. This is the fly shield, you won't see it anyway. So I'm going to turn it through, give it a press, edge stitch just around that edge that you just sewed, and then what we're going to do is finish this long edge together. And I'll come back and show you what that's going to look like, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, we're moving on to the pocket facings on the front. So we have our coin pocket and we have our pocket facings. Now, generally speaking, there's only one coin pocket, and that's usually on the right-hand side. I think that's probably if you're right-handed. So if you're a left-hand dominant, then you can just cut it on the other way around instead. So the first thing you're going to do is finish the top edge of the coin pocket and then fold it down 1/2 inch. Then what you're going to do is pin stitch and top stitch that. So I've done that. Oh, camera focus. There we go. So I have pin stitched and edge and top stitched that coin pocket, okay, along that top edge, which is the finished edge. And then I've folded this other straight edge over 1/2 inch or 1.3 centimeters. Then I'm going to take the pocket facing that corresponds to the side of coin pocket I want. So and it's the right hand side. So this is the wearer's right. So throughout the pattern instructions and throughout today, I am going to attempt to always refer to, if I say right and left, refer to it as it's the wearer's right or the wearer's left. So the notches on that curved edge of the pocket facing should correspond to where it's going to, where this coin pocket edge will line up. Okay, so these curves should match pretty closely. There we go. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now sew this coin pocket to the pocket facing. I'm going to sew it down along here. So just along this edge, I'm going to use top stitching thread. I'm going to pinch stitch and then top stitch it down. So it's going to look exactly like this edge, but this side will be open. And then I'm also going to just sew a safety row of stitching along here. I don't know about you, but I don't really use this pocket for very much, but maybe you do. So this one's actually a decent size, so you might actually be able to put something in it. So my line of pin stitching, I'm just going to go down here. I'm going to pivot and go around the curve. And then I'm going to do a second row of top stitching down there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish this edge with this attached, the coin pocket attached, and I'm going to finish the other pocket as well that doesn't have the coin pocket attached. Right, so I have sewn that coin pocket on using the edge stitch and the top stitching, and then gone along here and then just finished it together. Now this is the pocket bag here. Pocket bag? I can never get the... Anyway, it's the pocket. So, and this is the part that will be exposed at the hip. And so the purpose of this facing here is just to, so you have denim there. And you might ask, why do you even bother using a lining fabric here? Could you just do this whole thing in denim? And yes, you absolutely could. However, because this is a home sewing pattern, we want to reduce as much bulk as we can just to ensure that your sewing machine can handle it. So that's why we use a lining fabric here for both this pocket and the pocket bag. Now, at this point, we're actually going to sew the right side of this to the wrong side of this pocket. And you might ask, why that is, and that is because we're not going to see this inside, but when you pull your pants down, you are going to be able to see this, and it's really nice if you used a pretty fabric to be able to see that. So we're going to just place this on top here, and I'll pin it in place just to show you, if I can find my pins. Oops, they're all magnetized. So everything should line up pretty well. So you're just going to match that top edge and the side to there. So I'm just going to actually sew all the way around there, just in a box loop thing. On both sides, just to secure it. So remember, we're securing wrong sides together. So the wrong side of this facing here to the wrong side of the pocket. Okay, so I stitched that around, all the way around. I've got a functional coin pocket, and I'm going to put these aside for just 1 minute. Next thing we're going to work on is our front pockets. So I'm just going to take one of my fronts, just going to put my scissors here to weight it down. The other thing that you'll need at this point is you'll need your cotton tape. So this is what that looks like. I'm just going to focus it in. Okay, this particular one is a very, very thin, fine twill tape. I I actually prefer the stuff that isn't a twill tape. I prefer the stuff that's a plain weave, but I couldn't get it very easily. It's about 1/4 of an inch wide. And it's used for stabilizing things. You might see it, actually it's sometimes used as just like hanger tape. Sometimes it's called hanger tape. You might see it in the shoulder seams of garments just to stabilize that. And I really like it for stabilizing our pockets. And the reason we need it is because this is a curved edge, and because this is a pattern that's designed specifically for plus size people, the opening's quite large and it's a curve, and we don't want it to stretch out and bag out. So we're just going to sew that in to the seam to stabilize it so that you won't get a gaping pocket. It's quite a useful technique. I use it all the time. It's one of my favorite notions, actually. So I'm going to take this pocket bag. Whoops, that's the wrong one. Here we go. Here's my pocket bag. I'm going to take it. I'm going to go right sides together, matching this curve, the curves here. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to sew this here using a 1/2 inch or 1.3 centimeter seam allowance. While I'm doing that, so I'm right sides together, pocket bags to the fronts, I'm going to sew the tape in at the same time. Just like that. So 1/2 inch seam allowance around there. If that seems a bit tricky to you, that's fine. Just sew it once without the tape, just to secure your seam, and then sew it again with the tape on there. So, sew around here, right sides together, then sew with the tape, and then I'll be back to show you how to clip that. Okay, I've sewn that, and because it's an inside curve, we need to clip it. So what I'm going to do is clip this curve, but I don't want to clip into that cotton tape, so I'm just kind of flipping that up and clipping in behind it. If you're never sure about how close together to clip, always err on the side of closer than further, because you won't get steps that way. You could grade this seam. If you're using something heavier than I'm using, you probably should, but this is really fine. I'm just not going to even bother. So then, clipped around that part of the curve. You don't need to clip this part because it's straight. Then what I'm going to do is flip this up this way. All the seam allowances are pointing here, and I'm going to understitch around this pocket curve. Here's one I did earlier. So I have neatly understitched around here, and what that does is it just helps us flip the pocket behind, keeps the pocket bag going the right direction. Okay, so I'm going to press that, and then I'm going to pin stitch and top stitch around this curve using my top stitching thread. Okay, so I've sewn that. Take your time to get that stitching really nice and even, because you'll see it all the time. So now I'm going to take that pocket with the coin pocket and the facing on it, and I'm just going to pop it behind. You can see now how it's starting to look like jeans, which is really cool. Okay, I'm going to turn it over. And you can also see why we why we sewed that pocket facing to the wrong side of the lining. So now what we're going to do is we're going to sew the pocket and the pocket bag together along this curve. But it's really important that we keep it, we don't sew it to the front at this point, we just want to keep it free. So you can flip it back here, like this, and pop some pins in. Just matching those curves. You want to get those edges really well lined up because we want it to sit really flat when it's finished. And so if you are accurate with your cutting, then hopefully it's all gonna lie nice and flat for you. So we're going to sew around, oops, sew around that curve using a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then you're going to finish that edge together. The next thing you're going to do, it's optional, but you're going to sew just a line of stitching just up here of just these pockets, just to sew it together. The reason that we do that is because, like, if you don't do that, then your items can actually end up getting lost in this part here, and it's just a bit of a pain. So you can just stitch a line of stitching up there, again making sure that you're not sewing it to the front. When you're done doing that, it's going to look something like this. Okay, so we've sewn that seam around here, it's been finished, and I've sewn that row of stitching just down there. So I'm going to do that on the other side and then come back. Okay, we're really getting somewhere now. It's starting to really look like jeans. So next step is to stay stitch the pocket assembly down. I'm going to stay stitch it, well, I've actually already have done it. So up this side, up the fly edge, and around here. This bit you don't need to stay stitch. This lower edge here of the pocket will line up with the notch. If it doesn't quite line up, that's okay. The important thing is that everything is sitting really nice and flat at this point. So just check it, give it a good press, and then what you're going to do is finish this edge, this curved edge here on both sides.